Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode from GuigLit, the video channel that concerns itself with books, beards and beyond. Today we are going to be continuing our series on Macbeth, our exam success series, and we're going to start looking at the scenes in the play now, starting to look at the analysis and how one analyses the play itself. I'll be covering the key scenes as I see them in the play, and we will begin today on Act 1, Scene 1. So whilst we go through this, just as always, what can you do with this lesson to help broaden and develop your understanding of Shakespeare? Well, first of all, as always, please make sure you're taking notes as you watch this video. It's really important to keep a hold of the knowledge that you learn today and that you keep going back through that in the weeks and months that follow. In addition, I would always strongly recommend making mind maps, visualizing your learning to reach its true potential. Another good piece of advice I've always offered is revision tools. Whether you're doing this by yourself or with fellow classmates or people that are also reading the same text as you in other classes, using these videos as a revision tool so that you watch them all at the same time is really useful. And I always encourage you to leave a like and a comment as well so I can better improve the videos I put out as part of GuigLit. My other piece of advice would be to use this to annotate a copy of the text. Annotations is something we're going to be doing a lot of today, and you're going to see how I personally would annotate a particular part of the text. So a really useful way of consolidating your revision, as always, is making sure we annotate as we go. And finally, make sure that you're listing the examples where you can. So when we're talking about whether it's Macbeth or Banquo, Lady Macbeth or Macduff, we're going to be looking at different examples and we can list different quotes, different parts of the text as we go. So with this in mind, how would we analyse this particular play, Macbeth, effectively? What's the best way of doing it? I've got 4 tips in my many years of teaching this that will help you to really make the most out of the quotations and annotations and your overall learning as you go. My first piece of advice would be make sure that you understand the plot itself. There's no point reaching for quotes when we don't understand what the quotes are based on. We have to have an understanding of the basic plot before we go anywhere. So that is step 1 before you do anything, viewers. Really make sure you do that. Beyond that, I always say to be short, sharp and specific when you're doing your annotations. I call this the 6-8 rule. What I mean by that is that you will get text, pieces of the text, quotations that are longer. That makes perfect sense. However, largely, often, the best, most effective quotes are those that are short and sharp. They're between 6 to 8 words, roughly. And in doing so, that gives you a nice little window into the text that you can then develop your analysis from at that point. From here, I would strongly encourage you to track through a particular scene as you go. Note the changes that you see either in a character, in the mood or atmosphere, as it happens. So I would start from the beginning of a scene, work my way down, see what happens with the play, the character, the message that actually comes across is really useful. And on top of that, finally, I would say, notice how a particular scene or a particular act ends. What is the effect? Who says the last words? What do those last words mean? What is the value of those as we go? So before we begin, I'm going to just provide you with some information on the scene itself. What does happen in Act 1? What characters are in Act 1, Scene 1? And furthermore, what's the effect of what's been happening in Act 1, Scene 1? Well, the first thing we learn is that the scene sets the tone for the entire play. The only characters in this scene are the 3 witches, and the 3 witches are talking about their plans that they are trying to manifest, and particularly how they affect our protagonist, Macbeth. As well as this, it takes place on the battlefield or a desert place, some texts say. It takes place in the very place where the civil war is just erupting between Duncan's forces and the rebellious forces and forces of Norway. So we already have this idea that the play is set in a sense of chaos. We have the sense that the play is around turmoil and that things will become overthrown and there's a sense of overarching chaos, as I just mentioned there. This also demonstrates the power of the witches. The witches have the first lines in the entire play, so their power cannot be underestimated. What we see here is them plotting and hatching a plan that will not only give Macbeth greater powers than he ever imagined, but also far, far greater troubles for both him and Scotland as a whole. So what I'm about to do here, folks, is just bring up the first scene, as you can see there. Act 1, Scene 1, it's a very short scene, probably one of the shortest in the entire play actually. There's an awful lot that comes with it. So what I've done here, through the powers of the computer itself, I've highlighted it and annotated it in a clear way that should be useful to you all. So we see it's set in a desert place, as it says here, or a battlefield, your copy may say. Different copies vary depending on that. And what we see at the beginning is thunder and lightning, and 3 witches enter. Now, the thunder and lightning is a sense of pathetic fallacy, where the weather reflects a mood or an atmosphere. So the thunder and lightning reinforces their idea of chaos, destruction, and it's a foreshadowing of the events to come, okay? That there's not going to be stability in Duncan's realm for as long as Duncan is going to be king. That short while he will be. We also then see that there are 3 witches. Notice that, and if you have any rudimentary understanding of the Bible and Christianity, the number 3 happens quite often there. We have the Holy Trinity of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, for example. So the 3 witches, there's almost this subversion where a corruption, a twisting of common Christian imagery here. So whereas you have the 3 in the Holy Trinity, you now have the 3 witches. We also see that they have a lot of lists of 3, as we'll see in just a moment. The first line uttered in the entire play says, "When shall we 3 meet again?" Notice the word "when" there. This demonstrates that they've done this before, when and again, that they are agents of chaos. The witches have been agents of chaos for a great period of time as well. And we have this list of 3, thunder, lightning, or in rain. Again, we have this reinforcement of the chaos that is coming with the witches. They are associated with misery or tumultuous weather. It's very important to notice that. Please feel free to leave a comment as well as you watch this. If I can answer any questions, I'll be more than happy to. And feel free to pause this as you go as well, if you'd like to make sure you've got the annotations right. Continuing on as we continue throughout the extract, we have this line here from the second witch: "When the battle's lost and won." We see that they are waiting for the culmination of the civil war. We see how the witches have a predatory aspect to them. They're waiting for the chaos that is happening right now to end, and then making their mark, then striking upon Thane of Glamis, that we know as Macbeth. The third witch is then seen to be saying, "That will be ere the set of sun." The set of sun here is a reference to and reinforcement of this idea of the rise of darkness, not just the setting of the sun in a cosmological, astrological sense, astronomical rather. We have this idea of the set of sun as the rise of darkness, the setting of the good era or a more civil era, and in turn darkness as a metaphor for evil will rise. First witch is then heard say, "Where the place?" Second witch then says, "Upon the heath." The heath is an area of wilderness, okay, of desolation. Again, the setting matching the witch's intent, that the witches are characters of evil. And then they say, the third witch says, "There to meet with Macbeth." That Macbeth is the objective, Macbeth is their target. There's a lot of questions in the play about predestination and free will. Are Macbeth's actions predetermined? Does he actually have any say or anything that he can do in there? Or is it rather the sense that he is a pawn in a play by the witches? He's a puppet on strings to them. And we see here that really they choose to meet him. At the very first instance, they choose to meet him. He's the target. First witch is then quoted as saying, "I come Grey Malkin." Grey Malkin is a term for a cat, a witch's familiar, an animal closely associated with the supernatural and witches, which brought suspicion and fear. You must remember, an audience in the 17th century would see the witches as a legitimate threat, a legitimate fear comes with them. So when we see aspects of Grey Malkin and the heath and thunder, lightning, rain, we've got to remove ourselves from this 21st century perspective of witches being something that is more sanitized, more akin to Halloween. Witches brought with them fear, and they brought with them mistrust to the general public. And grey malkin is another symbol of that. The cat that would be a witch's close companion, their familiar. The second witch is then seen as saying paddock calls, a non from the third witch. Then we have fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air. There's a chant-like quality to this throughout this play, as we see, and particularly in this scene where the witches are concerned. And there's two things I'd just like to draw out from this point in the play. The first aspect is this switching of fair and foul, fair being good, foul being evil, that fair will become foul, the good, such as Duncan and Banquo, will be killed off, and the foul deeds will bring fair rewards. There's that sense there. We also have this idea of hover through the fog and filthy air. Hover in the sense of levitation, a trait commonly associated with witches. But we also have this sense of fog reflecting the confusion that they will bring, the disorder to Scotland that will be through their actions and deeds. And then finally we have filthy air. The filthy air reinforces this idea of diseases that witches were meant to bring with them, characters of great wrongdoing and evil. So the scene ends on this idea that they are the powerful aspect here. They are almost the architects of the events of the play. And what we see here is them in powerful, enchanting in unison to almost consolidate their power and consolidate their strength as they go, and the play goes over to the civil war that is currently erupting in Scotland. So that is the conclusion of Act 1, Scene 1, a really short scene. I really thank you as always for tuning in and for watching. Please like this video, share it with your friends so you can spread the word of GuigLit, and leave a comment please as well in the comment section below. That would be really appreciated. I do read them all, and I do respond to them all in good time. Also please follow on Twitter at LitGuig as well for any more updates anyone would like on English or books, beards and beyond. And until next week, and until next time, have a great time, and I'll see you on the next video. So take care and bye bye.